Good morning.
People on the phone, good morning.
Good
I
morning.
hope so good.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Monday. Right. Happy Monday, and let's get started. So today, as Nishish mentioned, we are looking into three main topics. So these are advanced topics, all right. So these are mainly from a perspective of knowing how Sitecore works internally, right? Why are these important? Because whenever we are working on solutions, there are situations that we need to alter Sitecore configurations in some or the other way, right? And at that particular point in time, um, we do not know what to do, when to do, or where to do. So this is just a glimpse of, what it is. You can say it's a tip of an iceberg or a 10,000 level view of, what exactly resides in Sitecore and what can be done, right? So we'll be covering Sitecore configuration files loading order. That is important because we need to understand what is Sitecore config patching. All right, so it's kind of a prerequisite. And later we will look at Sitecore local troubleshooting and debugging. Right. So let's get started. It takes a little while to load on the screen, so please bear with me. Sitecore configuration files load order. So think about it. Why is Sitecore this much, at a kind of a top level as far as the CMS is concerned? Because it is not hard coded, right? It is all configuration driven. Whole Sitecore is written such that you can replace anything with anything and still continue to work. Okay, of course, you need to do something. For example, if it requires an object, it requires an object here. Okay. So such things we need to provide, but it is completely configuration driven and everything in Sitecore is configurable. Okay, not just the website and the pipelines of the website. Okay, anybody know the word called pipeline?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, can anybody explain what is a pipeline?
Defined steps for deployment are, I mean, to
Process we can.
from local to somewhere on the server.
Kind of a pipeline. Yes, absolutely. So pipeline, just think about it, pipeline is kind of, a way in which, for example, authentication, right? So you want to make sure that after a user successfully authenticates, you provide him some properties, right? So you'll write a pipeline or tweak an original pipeline, write a processor in that pipeline. Okay, processor is just a level of steps. पहले ये किया, फिर ये किया, फिर ये किया, फिर ये किया. And during those steps, you need something which is kind of an object which goes through from one processor to another, so that the context is maintained or the properties that you want to maintain is maintained. Okay, simple terms, not going more technically. That is a Sitecore pipeline. Okay, so for example, if you want to, when you talk of a website, HTTP request begin is a pipeline, right? So whenever your request begins, so for example, a user opens a Sitecore website on their browser, and I'm not talking of headless here, I'm just talking of plain Sitecore. Okay, what all happens, right? The request comes to the server. When it comes to the server, I mean the physical server or PaaS environment, then it goes to the IIS. IIS reads the configurations and decides, okay, I need to send it to this particular site, right? And then in that site is when the HTTP request begin comes into place. I need to do this, I need to provide these values. Okay, this is the user request. So this is the page context, this is the data source context, this, that. That is how everything is built into it. And then what a user sees is the page. Right? We in the last sessions we saw how renderings are, placeholders are, layout is, page item is, data source item is. Everything is separate. But how does it come together and is visible to a user? Based on pipelines. Right? So that is how the whole picture works together. So now when you say everything is configurable, not just those pipelines, you can even tweak the content editor if you want to. And many of us know we have already tweaked that in the past. Right? So yes, even the content editor can be changed as per our need. We can add more buttons to the content editor, or even experience editor can be changed. A new experience editor can be built altogether if you. It's that configurable, right? That is the reason why Sitecore is known to be a top enterprise level CMS. But think about it, if everything is in one file, right, there will be two problems. At one point of time, the file limit will matter. And second is it will become too messy. Right? So there has to be some way in which it is divided within multiple files and it is maintained there. So that is where, Sitecore, what it does is it organizes it into multiple files and folders. Okay? And when we are organizing it in multiple files and folders, you need some way of presenting it, right? Like for example, what should be loaded first and what should be loaded later. Simple. It is maintained by something called layers.config. In layers.config, you basically have, load orders set based on some file types, or I should say configuration types, right? So quickly, we'll see. Whenever we talk of config, one config is always there, whether you say Sitecore, whether you say .NET, which is web.config, right? So in Sitecore as well, it starts with web.config. Yeah, from Sitecore's web.config, it basically connects to the app config folder, wherein there are multiple files in the app config available, all right, like connection strings.config, sitecore.config, and multiple other files are available there. But what defines what to be loaded at what time is defined by layers.config. All right, so let's have a look at it in action. So what I'll quickly do is I'll quickly go to our web.config and just bear with me for a minute here. Yeah, thank you. I just thought the machine was fast. Continue. Crazy. Sorry for that. Still not.
Loading all the files in the sequence, that is, all those scripting files or anything, what actually.
On the Sitecore config files, and we'll look at all those in detail. But for example, now with web.config being open, for example, let's search for connection strings. Okay. So if you see, there is a tag of connection strings available here. I hope it is visible or I can.
Maybe a little zoom more.
Right, so you have a tag of connection strings, right, and it links to which file? Config source is this. Okay. So this is like it always starts with the web.config at any place. Okay. Now, what I do is I quickly go to layers.config and we will see something here. So layers.config starts with layers, and every layer, like this is first is the Sitecore layer, okay, and its folder is which folder? App config / Sitecore. Okay, and in here there are different path provided, and here is the load order basically, and the path that is provided is identified as a type. It's either a folder or a file. Okay. Most of them you will find to be folders only, as far as Sitecore is concerned. But the reason Sitecore gives the type definition of folder and file is, for example, when we are developing something custom, and even in a folder we need an order, we can have a type file to be ordered first and then the other one ordered later. All right. So then similar to this, we have another layer called modules, another layer called custom, another layer called environment. All right. So let's see in the folder structure. When I go to Sitecore folder, right? How are these folders organized? So I go to app.config, I go to Sitecore, and all the folders that we are seeing in the layers.config will be available there. Right? So if I go to processing.engine, here is the folder, and there is one file called sitecore.processing.engine. Are we good till now? Okay. Next, let's go to the second reporting. Right? So let's go to the reporting folder. There are multiple files. What happens? So if you have one folder and you have one file, fair, we understood. But what if there is one folder and multiple files? In that case, Sitecore assumes alphabetical order. Right? So these are already alphabetically ordered. Sitecore.reporting.client, then core, then services. That is the order which it. If, for example, we want to load something in sitecore.reporting.core first, we will need to add that as a file before the reporting folder, and it will be done. Clear? Or maybe you can just rename that file to one. Okay, simple. Now, yeah, sure.
We have to add that file as a file to load, right?
Yeah, you can add a file.
Then we have to remove this folder.
So technically, I will go towards that route when we are talking about config patching. Right? But yes, that is the way. If you have to add this file individually, you will put it at a different location and remove it from it. Otherwise, it will be loaded twice and site will be confused.
So while upgrading the site code,
Yeah.
is it affecting?
Yes, if you don't use the best practices, it will affect. And that is where we talk of config patching and why is it important. All right, so we are clear till this particular point of time, I believe. Yeah. So now let me go to the browser and searching for it. So what I do is I am first of all, I'm just loading one particular page. This page of Sitecore, and let me just zoom it in. What does this page of Sitecore do? You have all the different configs from a maintenance or a management standpoint, right? But as a developer, what you also need is to look at one place when all the files come together and connect into Sitecore, right? So you have like say 100 config files, but eventually they are connected to Sitecore, and then at one place you need to see, you need to identify load order, you might need to identify what do you want to patch, right? You cannot go to each and every individual file and define that. For that reason, we have show config. So interestingly, what we will do now is we will go to Sitecore.processing engine. I'm not going to open it here, I'll go to Visual Studio instead. Sitecore. And let me search for this particular entry in Shogun. So if you notice, because this was the first file in load order, in the services, it is kind of a service. Okay, so when we look at this particular file, we will notice that there is after configuration, Sitecore, we have services, and there is a registration of a service. Right? So because this file is at number one location, in show config as well, we will notice that in services, this is at the top location. Right? So now all the points that we saw previously, now are they connected? How individual files, load order, how it comes together at one point. Similarly, because after this, of course, we had a reporting folder, right? So let's go to reporting. And we saw that the first was client. So this is the registration type of client, register tag of client, right? So let me search for this now. Right below it. Right? So our query of load order being set from layers or config. Is it clear with this particular point? We can of course go ahead and get other things as well. Okay. Now there is one more way to understand, because basically when we talk of Sitecore, right, we have content management, we have content delivery, we have standalone, we have now of course Excel Cloud also comes into picture, but previously we had the services, Xconnect services. So all those are what? They are roles of Sitecore, right? So if you want to load this show, so currently whenever you just say show config.aspx, it will load the basic config. But you can also load this role wise. Okay, what do I mean by role wise? So let me just go to one of the files and I will be able to show you, for example, thank you. So this is role required is standalone for content management. What does it mean? These roles define whether this configuration will be executed in that role or not. So this particular service registration doesn't need to be happening on a CD server. It only needs to happen if it is a single server, which is standalone, or on a CM server, content management. Because this is regarding what? This is regarding reporting, processing and reporting, which is about Sitecore contacts. Okay.
One thing I would like to add here. Now ये role required. Initially it was not available within Sitecore. So हम लोग को क्या करना पड़ता था? For CM, if I have a different configurations, and for CD I have a different configurations, so we will have to use some third-party tools like Flowcheetah, जो transformations provide करते थे. And then we have to make sure that file deployed properly. The CM1 goes to CM and the CD1 goes to CD. तो हमको दो configurations maintain करनी पड़ती थी. But then Sitecore came with the rule. Okay, you maintain one configuration file only. I will identify which to apply where. That's why this role required came into picture. This has now made it us very easy for us. हमारे सारे configurations एक जगह है. We just need to make sure where it gets applied and it automatically takes care.
Thank you, Rishesh. When you even if this file is on your CD server, it is as good as a defunct file. Okay, but that is where the advantage is now. Both the environments can be in sync. We don't need to remember, okay, CM has this file, CD has this file. Okay, so now let's do one thing. In show config as well, we have such a way available wherein we can load based on a role. Right? So if I'm saying content delivery, now let me search for this. Same file is same show.config, but Sitecore decides, okay, this content management doesn't require the bindings. As soon as I make it standalone, available. Got it?
In CD also this file exists, but when Sitecore, when we hit show config, it actually calculates, okay, what file I need to take with depending on role, what's the pipelines or processor or the register that are available for CD, that only it will include in show config. And that is the file that is getting used on your application on the CD instance.
Right? Now you don't need to remember these configuration or these parameters. Okay, what I do is I again go to this slash admin. I just open the admin page. Okay, and I will reset it so that I can go to. Right. So over here, it tells us all the config layers which were there, like Sitecore modules, custom environment, all these, the same ones which we talked of in layers.config, right? And then which configuration role do you want to see it for? Okay. So for example, I go to content management and see, click to see the result configuration. By default, generate this particular show config query string and give me the config so that I can then see what is available in content management. What can I link to, hook to, or patch? All right. Can we continue? So these four folders which we saw, here is a little bit about all four of them. All right. Sitecore and modules are reserved only for Sitecore use. As a best practice, we never update or add anything to it. If we want to do anything, we will use the custom folder, which is config include. Right. So now, if you have heard during some conversations with the backend developer, foundation, feature, project, Helix principles, right? So we have those projects as per foundation, feature, project. Then each of this project has a config include and a foundation or a feature project folder. Inside it, there is a config. Where does it link to? It links to app config include, and inside that there is a folder. So anything inside include will be considered custom. All right. And then you can also have something which is environment level. Okay. So let's say you want to do something for QA environment, you do something for this environment, I don't know. So those things are related to environment. Don't really use it much, to be very honest. What is highly used is include, which is the custom. All right. And by default, the layers or config already has the path set. Okay. And I'll again open the layers or config to show you that. Here is the layer for Sitecore. When we go to custom, we already have foundation, feature, project all set. We don't need to go and change this until and unless we are making something different. Alright. Until and unless we are following the same procedure that every folder, everything is something which is inside foundation, feature, or project, we are all good. The moment we change this structure, we might need to manage its load order. Alright.
Any particular use case for those environment specific? You said it's not recommended, right? Environment specific change QA.
I mean, we used to do it previously. Again, this example which Nishish currently said is something which can fit in that category. Sometimes it is also possible that, for example, without SXA, if you want to, have a login page or something on QA environment, but not to have it here. Maybe some password protected, config level password protected pages, right? The whole website. So such things you can utilize the environment, but technically now we don't. With the old based configuration, things have become very easy. Right. So let's quickly revise web.config, which connects to app.config. The layers of config basically has the load order. You can have a path which can either specify a folder or a file, right? Then next we have the load order. So let me give you an example here, and who would like to just come over and just tell us what is going to be the load order here? Anybody on the phone is also welcome to say so. Anybody wants to try? Let's try now. That it's okay if you are wrong.
9, first of all, the file one.
Sorry,
So we first load the file.
file.
No, first tag is to
First.
folder 1 and folder 23,
23 can
then that file folder 9.
Good, you are right, okay? So the load order basically will be, we'll first have the folder of folder 23 available here. Folders and files, whatever are specified in the load order, it will follow the same load order. Right? First, it will load folder 23, then it will load the specific file of folder 9, then it will load folder 1. And each of the folders, like 23 or folder 1, it will take alphabetical order.
Inside the folder you take.
Folder 23, if it has 3 files, so that would be loaded first. Then that specific file. And then folder 1, whatever files we have, that will be loaded in alphabetical order.
So inside the folder it will follow the alphabetical.
Alphabetical.
If not specified.
This is where your point comes up. For example, if I have to load a specific file before, that is what that site specific config is like.
Now you have made this configuration. Now how will you check this configuration is working or not properly? I think that's the last question. What do you?
Yep. How will we check?
Show config.
Precisely. All right, moving on to the next topic, Sitecore config patching.
Just
So,
before we go ahead.
sure.
Earlier we written for the role, it's a standalone or content management. I mean, that's the actual value or we have just for configuration.
Yeah, actually.
So how, I mean, how we decide whether it go for a content management or it's a
Great question.
both?
Yes, great question. For example, what is, for example, something needs to be happening only in Sitecore content management. Like, for example, you are creating a new button. Okay, or you are doing something with, the Sitecore contact processing or Sitecore contact reporting. You are having another custom chart and you are doing something for the reporting of the contact. Like, for example, a user is submitting a form, so that contact comes up, right? So you want to show me something. This has nothing to do with your website. So it is only content management. But standalone is like everything together. So you have to make sure that it is standalone plus content management. Right? For example, now now I'm again not talking of SXF, pure Sitecore. We want to have a not found page 404. Okay. Now that particular point of having a 404 page, it will be for your website. Okay. So for example, if I just type in ABCD, it should go to 404. There is a pipeline that you will write and make sure that the content delivery is set there. Okay. Example wise.
But I mean,
There are 3 rules: standalone, CM, and CD. Whatever you want to execute in CD only, you will specify CD. If you want that to be executed in CM, you will write CM. This happens on above and on. But local, if your local is standalone, your CM CD is same in the same instance. That's why it's standalone. So these 3 roles. Now, whatever pipeline or procedure you want to execute in any of the role, you can specify standalone or CM or CD. Talking about 404, that 404 page should go like you decide yourself. This, if I am adding a pipeline to configure 404, my CD side will also need to go to 404 if somebody adds some dummy URL. My CM side should also go, standalone should also go in my local. I want to test it. So all 3 will be available. If there is anything, for example, Salesforce connection, in that we have a password. In my QA, password is different. In my in my CD, password is different, say for example, and in my CM, password is different. So I'll use one config just for content management.
okay, one for.
Below that line, I'll write one more only for CD, same parameter.
And
Yeah, so this is regarding role. There is one more environment,
environment.
which we can discuss later.
Yeah. So okay, we need to identify the why behind this role. For example, if by building something and it is not necessary to be executed on that particular role, specifically related to CD, so we want to keep the CD very simple. Okay. when we add more processors or pipelines to any, what do you say, role, right? That role becomes heavy, right? So we want to keep CD very simple. We don't need anything related to content management to execute on CD, and hence we specify there should be CM only, CM or standard. Generally, whenever we have CD, it will generally be there on CM as well. Like for example, 404 मैंने एक तो example की तरह बनी, it will always be there on CM also, right? But we want to keep CD clean. We want to keep CD lightweight. For that reason, these roles are used. So config patching, as we know, Sitecore is config driven and everything is configuration. So we can change it as per need. We have two ways of doing it. One is updating an existing config or creating a new file. Okay. But the best practice says create a new patch file and do that change, because we can manage upgrades. Okay. We have our own pipeline or processor written. We want to make sure that whether it is 9.x or 10.x, that continues to work. If we are updating the existing files of Sitecore, we will need to keep track of what the change is, and it will be very difficult to manage at the end. But if we are creating a patch file, you just build your project with the newer references of Sitecore. Once it is built successfully, to deploy it to the newer version of Sitecore, and 99% of the times it will not fail. There might be some runtime errors, which of course we'll need to troubleshoot. So as far as patching goes, there are multiple parameters available or multiple ways, or I should say keywords. Okay. Now, when we talk of patching, we need to understand what is patching. It's just hooking something which is already present, right? निशीश के पहले and निशीश के बाद में.
Patch करना.
Insert before, patch before, patch after. Alright. Just value, इस chair की value. निशीश को निकाल के वरुण को बिठाना है. Patch attribute. Okay. Patch instead. Patch instead मतलब पूरी पूरी chair निकाल दी, दूसरी chair रख दी. कुणाल बता. Patch instead. Deleting an element. निशीश को चाहिए था फालतू फेंक दिया बाहर. Alright. So again, these terms are technical, but if we put our real world examples into it, we'll be able to understand the way in which it is done. Okay, so I've just given a few examples here. So if you look at so the first one, which is patch attribute. So we generally have a app data folder where the logs and everything lies inside. Okay. So what I've done there is we have a patch attribute where we have changed the value from app data to app data / demo. Then we have patch instead available for the second level. For example, you already have something called mail server. As Nishish mentioned, वो जो Salesforce वाला point था वैसे ही हो सकता है. आपका environment wise mail server अलग है. You can say patch instead. Okay? Patch instead, so mail server value changes, and then we are again good. Okay. After that, we have patch after. Right, so you already have something which is there in your pipeline processors, and to patch this processor below the processor. Right, pipeline processors set of steps. It's just adding or inserting a step between two steps. That is patch after and patch before. Okay. We will see this in action. We'll see the config files so that we understand more. Okay. So what do we do generally in such cases? We create a new file, add it to custom layer, which is the include folder, generally in foundation feature or project or environment layer. Again, I'm just saying that because this is something which Sitecore supports. Now we only use the include folder. We generally do not go the environment folder. Sometimes we also create a folder called ZZZ. Inside include some of the projects you might find that, which are like some legacy projects. ZZZ means it will be loaded last. Nothing more than this. Okay. You have a basic, have it a .config extension and have a basic structure of XML configuration in Sitecore. And inside Sitecore, you put whatever you want to add. You want to add a setting, you want to add a service, you want to add a pipeline, you want to add a processor, right? You just need to follow the structure that is by default available in Sitecore, and then you can do the needful. Okay. So again, this is where this particular table comes into picture for us because we are only talking of custom and environment. The other two are reserved for Sitecore, and if we update anything which is specific to those two folders, we are bound to fail in case of obsoletes. Alright. And with Excel Cloud and everything, things are again a little different, but we are only talking of basic Sitecore right now. So now we'll quickly look at Sitecore troubleshooting and what are the steps to it, and then we'll go in the demo together. So when we talk of troubleshooting, basically first place to look is Sitecore logs. Okay. And even during the times of Rajesh Khanna, we had a song which said "Kuch to log kahen." So we definitely get something from the logs, which helps us, and which leads us to the root cause of that particular problem. Okay. Then we can go to the Sitecore admin section, which we went to right now, and there are a few pages like cache.aspx, or you can go to show config and see if something is messed up there because of which something did not load. Let's say you do not have anything in logs, but what you wanted to execute did not execute. You created a new processor, but you did not cook it. How can you have it execute, right? So in such cases, you can go to the Sitecore admin section. For example, some things of yours are coming from indexes, like say news items, right? News items will always be like thousands in number. So you cannot have it directly from Sitecore. You have to put it in an index file and bring it from there. So for example, they did not get updated. Indexes are not updated. So you can go to the indexing manager, re-index it and run. So such are, those few tips and tricks. Based on the functionality, we need to, just look at some places and identify. Right? So for example, if you have issues, for example, you are getting an exception or an error, log files, you have like some functionality, but you're changing something in Sitecore, it is not visible, cache.aspx, or if it is coming from indexes, indexing manager, right? If you have a pipeline processor or a command or a scheduling task or something written, it is not getting executed, show config. Okay, so these are those kind of directions which we can take to identify the problem. Okay, now I quickly go to by default, I go to Sitecore itself, and let's see if we can find something here. Okay. I go to say include. I have a example file wherein I have updated this. Okay, so basically what Sitecore does is it gives us some example files which we can utilize for ourselves. Like say for example, you have a CDN. Then it gives us a configuration of CDN available, and we can directly put this in include folder and utilize it. Right now, what I'll do is I'll go to include, and I will add this particular file. It is because of the teams that it is so slow. Let me go. Let's say a general project. What we do? So we just saw patch instead, right? This is how we patch instead, and give it a value. Then it is visible. Then we can have patch after or patch before a given processor. This patch before, right? And if I go to, let's say here itself, show config, something like patch attribute. Patients.
Patching only works for Sitecore वाला node. Web config के अंदर बहुत सारे होते हैं, connection strings भी होता है और दूसरे बहुत सारे node group nodes होते हैं. Patching will not work there. It is just for Sitecore. And as all this configuration is part of web config, so whenever we make a change in web config, application will restart. Disable हो जाएगा.
What it do is, of course, when we are creating a new patch file, it needs to be .config, right? Just renaming it. As soon as I do this, Sitecore will get restarted. Login. So what did I do in that config? I updated the data folder value. What was the initial value? It was something called /app data. Okay. And yes, I've got an exception. So let's go to the log files. What do the log files say? What is the app data folder now for logs? /demo/logs. Okay. Now I'll just refresh this folder once. And I will open the log file. Simple way. So basically Sitecore uses log format for logging all the things in the files. So info, warning, log, all those things remain. So what I have done is I've created like match case with capital error. And then say find all in current document. It has not found, which means it is still updating the file. We will definitely open this, but if we notice, what is it saying technically? Object reference not found. But when you start working a little bit in Sitecore, you will notice that some of these errors, you'll be able to figure it out what they mean. Okay, for example, this is regarding Sitecore.nexus.licensing. We have a Sitecore license file, has to be available in the data folder, otherwise Sitecore won't load. Now, if we look at the original app data folder, it has a license file. But when we changed, does it have the license file? No, it does not. Okay, so let's see, logs have been updated, like they have been. Okay, no issues, but this is specifically related to Sitecore.nexus.licensing. Okay, so let me move the license file in the new app data folder which we have. I just copy this and go and paste. In the meantime, any questions?
Generally, we are saying that sometimes that security patches apply. I mean, came from Sitecore, just happened with our site Excel project. So in that case, is that this thing, I mean,
This thing find some DLLs, maybe some configs and DLLs. Generally, it's some security hotfix came from Sitecore, means there has been some vulnerability in out of the box Sitecore's code somewhere. Okay, so what it does is it provides us that code in terms of DLL, and then as the code like patch होता है, right, service register होती है. So initially it was referring this. Now they have provided a patch and I should refer this. So in config we have to update the mapping. Don't refer this, instead refer this.
we have to update that.
So that Sitecore provides. We just have to make sure that we deploy it to the proper locations. App config include if that is updated like a patch, or it provides within the Sitecore folder. Some DLL we have to, some patching we have to add, and then DLL goes into main.
So that patching is again patch instead, generally.
Like it's patches.
99% of the times it is patch instead.
Patch instead.
Instead. So that patch instead basically replaces the existing code with the newer code which is secure.
And the folder structure, if the file is, I mean, 3 to 4 folder inside that file, so that structure is already came in that patch file or whatever coming from the site. I mean, for example, let's say one file xyz.config file is present inside 3 levels inside.
So wherever it is available, Sitecore will give you proper install.
The whole-
Update this file present in this folder.
Any third party thing we are using, like
SXA is a module, so we install SXA module, so it gets in module. Then we have
Solar Surge.
Solar Search comes out of the box, but if you want to use some third party, for example, CDN, right? So we can install some modules available. DAM, if you want to use third party that injects with Sitecore.
So Sitecore Connect and other modules from Sitecore are also going to module section. So for example, Sitecore Connect is now generally used for connecting with different systems. All those different modules which Sitecore provides, like for example, you go to dev.sitecore.com or .net, and over there along with Sitecore downloads, you have other downloads available. All those will go into module.
And the reason of having modules is again the same upgrade, right? Module gets upgraded, then where can we find? So it's available in modules. So when we update the module, that module itself will update its own files automatically.
Okay. So we added the license file and we are back to the login page, but we are still having an issue. But let's see. Finally, got an updated log file. So over here it is saying something related to something with Sitecore globalization. It is saying, right? What it is trying to do is it is trying to find some files which is regarding globalization. Now, when we talk about again, when we go back to the original app data folder, we'll notice something like localization, right? And there are, I just in the interest of time, there will be the next error, so I'm just copying both these folders. The new data folder. But this is basically what I wanted to show is that when you solve one error and you have a next error, this is how you can kind of identify troubleshoot. Now, because we changed the data folder, we know where to look. When originally it was working, that working folder, if you look at it and then if we compare it with the new folder, whatever things we find missing is what we can utilize here. Okay. We are just a little short of time, hence I am doing these steps. Otherwise, I have planned all these 3-4 steps together from a Sitecore debugging standpoint.
Now you might have a question, why this patching? मतलब हमको ये config डालनी क्यों है? Right? सब Sitecore तो दिया है already, तो डालनी क्यों है? कल के सेशन में
Stay tuned. Suspense, huh? Sorry for the trouble here, guys. If we stopping Teams share. What would have generally happened? I just give you quickly as a gist. Number one, of course, we had to add the license file, after which the error changed. After that, it looked at the localization items. It did not find anything related to globalization, which was a must. It was a prerequisite for Sitecore to load and show. Hence, it gave an error for that. Next, it was regarding those items, which is like the folders for we have all those folders inside these items. It would have given us the errors related to these DAT files. These are the initial level files which have to be there. Okay. And last, it would have told us about device detection. So whenever Sitecore initiates, even in content editor, it has to have this device detection DB available and it has to be locked. Because we changed the data folder, before it could create a file and lock it, Sitecore initialized. Right? So the last step, so there would be 4 steps. Okay, first step was license, second was localization, third was those items.dat that we saw, and fourth item would have been this, wherein we have to just restart the IIS once, because that process is currently in execution, it will not allow to create a file here. The moment we restart it, that deadlock will go out and then it will be created, and then that is when our CM is up with the new data. Okay. So this is just for information, everybody. We understand it is advanced level topic, but it is of course important to know what happens inside Sitecore. Right? All right. Any questions?
I'll need 5 more minutes. I want to show that rule.
I have those things to add in that.
I'll quickly share my screen. So we were talking about that role, right? Sorry, uh, environments. So supported role, not only CM/CD or standalone, but there are many indexing, processing, standalone, okay, content delivery indexing, content manager indexing, processing and standalone also. Now, how will you define कि ये मेरा system standalone है या ये मेरा system CM है? So there is in web config, there is a configuration role define standalone. So basically this application wherein this web config is used is a standalone role for the application. So whatever configuration I make using that standalone keyword role require will be applied to this instance. Okay. Similarly, I can search, right? Search define. So my default search is Solar, but I can have multiple. Sitecore needs Solar for CM side of things, but on my website CD I want Covio. So I will create some settings related to Covio which I don't want in CM. So I can utilize search define Solar, only apply this config to CM. I can create more here values. I can add role, yeah, environment, okay. And I'll say QA. So this becomes environment. Now for this role and for this application, this is QA wala environment. I can place this web config in my QA environment and I can utilize this environment variable in my configs. So for QA, connect to Salesforce QA environment connection string. Then for, say for example, UAT, in my UAT web config, I will have value here UAT. In configuration, I will give Salesforce UAT wala patch. Okay. So it will automatically define and identify what settings needs to apply based on the settings given in web config. Clear? Okay, again, as Varun mentioned, these are advanced topic. We don't expect you all to be knowing everything, but yes, concepts you should know. Okay. Anything? Yeah. So I think that is all. If you have any questions, feel free to ask now. People on the phone, any questions?
No.
Okay, so that is all for today's session. Tomorrow we will see multi-site configuration and how we develop in application with which has multi-site configurations. So stay tuned for that. We'll meet tomorrow same time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Thank you.
Tomorrow is at 2:30. All right. Thank you. Bye.